Ah, well, I don't hardly know her.
Welcome to the Ladies' Guide to How to Understand the Gaze. So, what is the gaze?
I'm glad you asked. The gaze is the silly Hollywood trick in which the camera uses the human eye as the interface between spectator and screen to alter the way you might typically see a character or situation.
Okay.
The most prevalent example being the lead female character having been sexualized on screen by a male director through the eyes of a male protagonist.
Kind of like close-ups on the female figure when they prioritize their body over their emotions or what they have to say, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah, I remember Laura Mulvey once wrote something like, "The man looks and the woman is looked at." That's what's happening here.
Yes. In that instance, they're only there to serve the male protagonist and male spectator. Their story isn't told because the camera prioritizes how they look. And yes, in this case, she only exists for the male pleasure, the pleasure of looking, which Freud terms scopophilia. The view in which you see her as a result of what the camera shows is called the gaze.
Okay, I think I get it, but scopophilia, that's a big word.
Well, scopophilia, as defined by Freud, is the pleasure of looking. Inherently, looking objectifies the one being looked at. Mulvey also mentions the pleasure of looking is subjecting them to a curious and controlling gaze. This applies to on and off camera, but the cinematic apparatus directly and inherently supports this pleasure because of how it's designed. We have no choice but to look in the exact manner the director wants us to. Supposedly, this goes back to early childhood, something called the mirror phase. An infant identifies with this mirror image, and he projects onto this image an idealized version of himself.
You know what, I kind of feel the same way. I'm always checking how I look in the mirror and thinking about the way that others perceive me.
Yeah, that's the male gaze in action.
I think I get it. The gaze can affect any group of people, but because it's only white men directing a mainstream film, women being sexualized is what we see the most.
Yes. So really, it can happen in any area of life, but mostly cinema.
Okay, I think I understand. So this affects cinema in particular because cinema is constructed, and every choice made comes from a conscious or subconscious want to inspire a feeling in its audience. It's kind of like this idea of formalist cinema. The world we're seeing is fictional and constructed, but it attempts to portray real-life interactions. I can definitely see how this could be dangerous because these manipulations are presented as realism, a window into an actual view of the world.
Yeah. And when I'm watching a movie, I'm not analyzing it. I'm just absorbing what I see.
Exactly, which is a problem because when women are sexualized objects on screen, we carry that into our regular view of the world. As Lassner and Hegner dissect, cinema is essentially the conflation of two looks, that of the camera and that of the spectator, different in time as well as asymmetrical in agency. It's the active look of the camera and the passive look of the spectator. This totally supports my point because the authors are basically saying how the spectator watching is generally passive or unconscious. Those outside of film theory aren't thinking critically, and their first instinct is to take what they see at face value. But the whole time, it's been manipulated by the gaze.
Yeah, and this sounds a lot like what we see in old classic Hollywood. I mean, current 1920s Hollywood.
Just like what they did to Norma Jean.
Yeah. Well, at least they won't have this issue in 100 years, right?
Oh yeah, we'll totally have this under wraps by 2020.